This is the Spurscast with your host, Paul Garcia.
Welcome back to another episode of the Spurscast. On today's episode, I will be speaking with Project Spurs Director of Digital Content, Joe Garcia. Joe and I will discuss the Spurs being on an 8-game losing streak, Alize Johnson returning to the team, and Isaiah Roby off the bench this season. Let's jump right into this episode with Joe. Joe, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Was just a tad late getting here. So for the people that don't know, we're calling this Spurscast Take 2.
Yeah, because I did Spurscast Take 1 and it was not very good. Like I was like trying to introduce you, but then I was like, wait, he might not show up. So it was just all over the place. But
I was stuck in traffic, but I am going to go back and look at Take 1 just so I can have a good laugh.
Yeah, that's definitely one for the bloopers later on. So
the lost episode.
The last episode's archives, and one day we'll release those. Yeah, Joe. So last time you were the last person I talked to on the Spurscast, and at that point the Spurs were on a 3-game losing streak, and then Thanksgiving came and went, and now the Spurs are on an 8-game losing streak. So let's talk about what's happened since our last recording together, Joe, a few weeks ago. We did take the break off because of the Thanksgiving break. So since we last recorded, Joe, the Spurs have gone 0-5 in that time frame. Let's do a quick recap of all of their games, those 5 games. So let's begin back in California. They're on the road at the Clippers. They lose by 22 points in this one. The Clippers were favored. There was no Devin Vassell in this game. He was injured, and it was pretty much over by halftime. I mean, the Clippers had a big lead, and they carried it forward. Then they go and play the Lakers in Los Angeles, and they lose this one by even more, by 31 points. They lose to the Lakers. The Lakers were favored in this game. In this game, there was no Jakob Poeltl. He was on the injured list, and same scenario here. By halftime, it's pretty much a blowout. Then the Spurs return home to the AT&T Center last week, and they play the Pelicans and lose by 19 points. New Orleans was favored, and it's kind of the same story where it's kind of New Orleans opens a healthy lead against them midway through the second quarter, and they pretty much hold it throughout the game. And this one was notable because this is the game where we know that Keldon Johnson has been he had been struggling recently in multiple games where he wasn't even scoring like over 20 points. And this is one of the games where third quarter comes and he only plays like 5 minutes, and Coach Pop actually benched him. He took him out of the game and didn't bring him back for the rest of the night. I was wondering, was it injury? But no, he had just been playing really. He just wasn't being very efficient in his minutes, and he kind of went through that, and he's kind of got it back on track in this last game against the Lakers. But again, then that was notable. Then the Spurs they had a back-to-back against the Lakers at home in San Antonio. On Friday, they play the Lakers and they lose by 11. The Lakers were favored. And I wouldn't say it was a blowout, but the Lakers kept a comfortable margin against the Spurs throughout the night. And the Spurs got it down at the end of the third quarter, but then the Lakers, were able to hold on to the game. And then their most recent game is probably like a sign of hope for them that they might actually finally end this losing streak, is because they actually played pretty well here. They lost to the Lakers by just 5 points. The Spurs were actually favored by a half a point. There was no Anthony Davis, and then the Spurs saw multiple big men leave this game. So Jakob Poeltl and Jeremy Sohan both got injured during this game, and then Zach Collins got ejected for fouling Russell Westbrook on a play. But we do want to note that it was a close game throughout. And so Vegas says the Spurs should have gone 1-4 in these last 5 games, and they ended up going 0-5. What were your thoughts on how this team performed in these last 5 games?
Oh man, well, like I was telling you before we started recording, one of the things that I had noticed is. In particular, you had mentioned with Keldon Johnson and Coach Pop sitting him fairly quickly, because he just wasn't feeling it. And basically what happens is Keldon Johnson is taking a lot of the team's field goal attempts. So is Devin Vassell. And when you're just not having a good shooting night like Keldon Johnson, and you're taking a lot of field goal attempts and not knocking him down, at that point you're just a detrimental, I guess, casualty to the team. At this point, you're just Coach Pop probably like, what, you're just not feeling it tonight, body language, and then you're just not shooting, and you just go through those shooting slumps. So he just pulled them to see, hey, if the team is going to win or lose, they're going to do it by pulling together. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the cards for them. But maybe, Keldon he just got exhausted. The mental strain is one thing that I think Spurs fans also have to take notice about, because he is the leader of this team for all intents and purposes. He's the franchise player, and wearing that moniker, wearing that crown comes with a lot of stress, so we have to take that into consideration as well. But, over the course of the losing streak here, I've noticed that the attempts, it's not the attempts, but the assist had dipped down a little bit. And that's one thing that I had talked to about with Jonas Clark as well, because we're having a discussion about the team, another Project Spurs alum. And, he had kind of pointed that out. And that's something that I had observed as well, that the assist had gone down. And that's when they started losing by even bigger margins. They cleaned that up again, against the second game on a back to back against the Lakers, which I was there. There was more energy. The team played a little bit better. But still, the defense, when you're looking at how good they are defensively, they're just not very good. I think they're one of the worst, if not the worst, defensive team in the NBA out of 30 teams. I think they're rated now at 30 out of 30, which is not good. Then you have, like I said, Devin Vassell and both Keldon Johnson taking the majority of the shot attempts for the team. And unfortunately, they're just not knocking them down. And when that happens, I mean, you compound that with poor shooting from beyond the arc, and a young team who makes a lot of mistakes because of inexperience, and the recipe for disaster. And if you go by the stats that you can see just about anywhere, if you go to ESPN, or you're going to Basketball Reference, or wherever you're going, the numbers aren't going to lie, and they're going to tell you one thing, that this team is just not very good. And it is what it is. Get used to that, Spurs fans, because we're in the middle of a full-on rebuild.
Yeah, and I want to bring up, you brought up some great points there, especially about Keldon. This is kind of what's expected. He's going to go through some slumps here, him and Devin at times. And, they're facing a whole new thing where, like, the defense is, if you're the leading scorer every night, guess what? We're going to game plan for you and try to take away what you're good at and things like that. And we've seen that, I noticed what you're saying, especially like his 3-point shot. He's a good, accurate shooter, but I mean, he's going through a shooting slump here where it's almost like he's forcing them at times. He's taking a lot of pull-up threes, and it's not a shot that he's efficient with yet. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like you pretty much talked about everything there. Like, this is kind of expected for this young team. I know that they got off to that surprising start where it looked like, hey, are they going to surprise some people? But no, I mean, this is kind of what it's turning into, and teams have kind of figured them out a little bit. And like you said, it shows where their rankings are. So let's talk about this team now, Joe, that we're through 21 games of the season. So they are 28th on offense. So they've actually gotten a little bit worse on offense since we last spoke. They were 25th last time. Their defense is still 30th, like you mentioned, dead last in the league. Their net rating, he's actually decreased as well. They have now the worst net rating in the league. So through 21 games, they are 6-15 overall, which is 14th out west. So only Houston's the only team that's worse than them out west. They are in the midst of this 8-game losing streak. And now that we've gotten to game 21, that's actually a little important, because now that's basically like 25% of the season's already over, and so we can start talking about what is this team going to look like. And so we're seeing, though, that this is definitely a team that's closer to that that number, that top 3 seeds in the lottery, those kind of picks. And so right now, and you and I are recording this on a Tuesday evening, they have the 4th worst record in the league overall, and that's just half a game ahead of the Houston Rockets, who have the 3rd worst record. Because remember the rules. All you got to do is end up with one of the bottom 3 worst records, and you can end up with a 14% chance at the number 1 pick. So you don't have to be, the Spurs don't have to end up as the worst team in the league. They just have to finish as one of the bottom 3, and they have a really good chance at the end of the year to end up with those 14% lottery odds for the number 1 pick. What are your thoughts there on just like overall, like where they kind of stand through 21 games? Kind of expected, or disappointing? What do you think?
To me, it was kind of expected. I had been saying this even going back to last season. When the team goes into a rebuild mode, it's going to hurt. You have to go through this lull with this young team, and this is what a lot of Spurs fans had asked for. They wanted the younger team out there. They wanted the young guns to go out there and ball out. You got your wish, and along with that comes a lot of losing, because they're just very inexperienced right now. And the only way they're going to get better is by playing games. And like you were saying right now, if you look at the worst teams in the NBA, the Spurs are right there. I think there as a handful of teams, I think it was 5 teams or 6 teams the last time I checked, that had 6 wins on the season. Yeah. And that was including the Charlotte Hornets, which Spurs fans wanted them to do well this season. Unfortunately, they're not.
Yeah, they're not.
And then again, when you're looking in the Western Conference, you have the Spurs and you have the Rockets. And then when you go into the Southwest standings, again, the Spurs are right there at the bottom of the barrel as well. I mean, you just have to be patient right now, because it is a rebuild. There's going to be a lot of growing pains. I know Coach Pop is probably just going to keep on rotating, players in and out, because he's going to start dealing with injury, because that is also part of the game as well. So unfortunately, it's going to be a long season. It's 82 games. And as you had stated, we're about a quarter of the way there. And we have the month of December coming up too. And then we know what happens after that. It's just going to be a gamut, because then you have the infamous rodeo road trip. You have the NBA All-Star game. You have the deadline coming up, and the rumor mill is going to be swirling like crazy. Unfortunately, you had Jakob Poeltl, who did go down with injury. We hope that he's going to get better because we need his stock to be high. Spurs fans want his stock to be high if the Spurs are going to go in fact trade him, because Spurs fans are wanting first round picks. Well, if you have a healthy player, you can get that. If he's injured, not so much.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so now, Joe, let's talk about a move that was made on Tuesday. So Tuesday morning, Adrian Wojnarowski broke this news that the Spurs were going to waive Jordan Hall, the guard, who's like more of like a shooter for the team right now, and they're going to be bringing back Alize Johnson. So who is Alize Johnson? He was on the team before in training camp in preseason, and he played in a few games, then he was waived. So apparently, I thought that Jordan Hall was on a non-guarantee deal, but according to Spotrac, he did have a $175,000 cap hit. That doesn't affect the Spurs' books too much. They're still projected to have about 28 to 30 million in cap space. So again, if they want to make a trade later on in the season, they're definitely able to do that. They're a very flexible team in that way with their salary cap sheet. Alize Johnson, his deal hasn't been announced yet exactly. How much the money's worth. So again, it's not going to be too much more. I think it's either going to be a partially guaranteed or non-guaranteed deal. Why did the team do this? They probably need some front court help. Like you mentioned, Joe, Jakob Poeltl, he is out with a right knee bone bruise against the Thunder on Wednesday. And then also rookie Jeremy Sohan, who got injured in that last game, is out with a right quad contusion. And even a player who comes off the bench in Keita Bates-Diop, who plays the 4, he's questionable for that game on Wednesday against OKC with the left ankle sprain. So we do see that multiple players in the front court are having some issues with injuries. And so that's probably why the Spurs made this move. Now, one thing that I found interesting was that, by doing this move, it shows that they're still not ready to give rookie Dominic Barlow some minutes. They kind of still want him in the G League getting minutes over there rather than coming to San Antonio. And then I think a date to watch that's coming up soon is December 15th, because like you said, we're almost in December now. And when that date gets here, that date's significant because a lot of players who signed their free agent contracts in December, they are able to be traded. So again, not in December, in July, whenever they sign their contracts, they're able to be traded. So again, I'm not saying the Spurs are going to make a trade, but we're going to start probably seeing some more rumors, like you said, as that date approaches. And then who's Alize Johnson? He's a 6'7" forward, 6'8" forward who plays closer to the basket. In 4 preseason games with the Spurs, he averaged about 7 minutes, 1.5 points, 3.3 rebounds, 1 assist. He really didn't play much. It was mainly like at the end of games. But per one of our Project Spurs colleagues, Jonas Clark, he did tweet this earlier. Jonas tweeted that Johnson's averaging 22 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and shooting 40% from 3 in Austin right now with the Austin Spurs. And he scored 25 plus points in 4 of 6 Austin games. So again, in the G League, he's been playing very well. What are your thoughts, Joe, on the Spurs waiving Hall, but then signing Johnson?
It's insurance, and you look at Zach Collins as well, and he just came back from injury and right away got ejected when the Spurs played the Lakers on that second game of the back-to-back. I think it's showing that the Spurs are just wanting to be safe rather than sorry, because if you go ahead and just rely on Zach Collins, who's, again, just coming back from injury, there's not a guarantee that he's going to stay healthy. We've already seen him go down early on in the season. And again, you just never know what's going to happen. And you have to be able to rotate your players out to try to keep all the bodies out there healthy. And, they're going to have other issues that you don't account for, like people getting ejected or getting into foul trouble early, so you have to have insurance. I mean, who else are they going to go out and put out there? Gorgie Dang, Coach Pop has shown that he has him as a DNP. And again, Gorgie is just insurance as well. That's why they have him as a DNP most nights, because he's, not the third option. He is the fourth option, and he doesn't really get a lot of minutes. So, as far as that goes, it's a move to just go ahead and solidify just having healthy bodies available in case something happens, and the move, as far as Barlow goes as well, I mean, you want your rookie to go ahead and get some playing time, especially in the Austin, G League, over there with the Austin Spurs, should I say, in the G League, because he's just going to get experience. Maybe the Spurs just see that maybe the rookie's just not particularly ready. There's some aspects of his game that they want him to work on. And right now, before the injuries hit, there wasn't a lot of playing time to go around. Now with the injuries, especially to Sohan, maybe Coach Pop might change his mind and call the rookie up for a game or two and then go ahead and put him back. But usually that happens if they're going to play the second game of a back-to-back and Coach Pop wants to rest some of the players who have been, seeing extended minutes. And usually that'll happen when they're on the road rather than them playing at home. So that's something to look forward to as well, as the Spurs get ready to hit the road. And, I got to say, Paul, when you're looking at their road record and their home record, it's horrible, man. They're about identical. I think it was something crazy. Like last time I saw it was like 3-7 or something like that. Um, it was bad. It was bad when I was seeing how bad they were away from the AT&T Center and at home. I mean, it doesn't matter where they're at. This is the team that you have right now. If you're a San Antonio Spurs fan, and all you can do is just cheer them on and just look for the little intangibles, and that's going to be growth. You like that you're seeing the effort, and you also like, Paul, that it bothers the team because they're losing. You hear a lot of good things after the games, even though they're losing. I believe it was Trey Jones who had said, "We're tired of losing this. They're frustrated. They're talking with each other." And that's a good thing. They actually care. If you didn't hear them saying that, there would be cause for concern. But since it bothers them and they're putting in the effort, they're just not winning. These are the things that you want being a fan of the San Antonio Spurs. So just be patient.
Yeah, and I think like going back to Barlow, I think that we will, eventually, I think like after like February, March, like we'll start to see him in a few games here with the Spurs. I think especially like as the trade deadline goes and comes, like I think multiple veteran players might end up getting moved. So if that happens, there's going to definitely be some minutes there for us. But I think again down the line, you're going to see him.
And we haven't seen a lot of Josh Richardson either because of the injury.
Yeah, he's been injured too. I noticed that he actually hasn't played since I think we last recorded. Like he really has. He's been on the injured list. Yeah, and so he's like questionable for this game against the Thunder. But yeah, he's also been out for a while too now. And so like one thing you just said there, Joe, is like is a perfect example of a player we're going to talk about. You just in a season like this where it's a real rebuilding season. There's not going to be a lot of wins. This is kind of what's expected. There is you want to look for like those small signs of like growth or players who are like playing well, maybe not getting a lot of minutes. And so one of those players let's talk about today is Isaiah Roby. He's actually in the midst of this 8-game losing streak. It seems like he's pretty impactful in his minutes when he goes out there. Now we do want to note he doesn't play a lot of minutes, so there's some nights that Pop won't even play him. Or he just maybe give him like 5 minutes out there. So let's just talk about how he's played so far this season tonight. I am going to show this one visually real quick. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. We got it. All right. So Isaiah Roby in 16 games with the Spurs this year. On offense first, 13 minutes he's averaging. When he does play, 5 points, he's averaging 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 0 turnovers, and those stats are rounded. He's mainly playing the 4 for the Spurs whenever Pop puts him out there, but there's been a few circumstances where he has used him as a small ball 5. We do want to note that he doesn't take a lot of shot attempts. So I'm going to go through his shooting numbers in a bit, but we want to note that it's a very low volume, only 4 attempts, shot attempts he takes per game, and he does take at least over 1 3-pointer game and 1.6 3-point attempts. So his shooting, that's one thing that I've noticed that's been very impressive is his outside shots. So his paint scoring, 55% of his shots come from the paint, and he's scoring well near the rim. He's averaging about he's only missed 8 shots, 16 out of 24, so he's efficient there. And then his 3-point shooting, both from the corners and above the break, have been efficient. And we know that defenses don't trust his 3-pointer, so they're leaving him wide open, where 69% of his attempts come from the wide open 3, and he's making them pretty well. And then it's just a few pull-up threes, but he's actually making those as well. And then as far as like where he ranks compared to other bigs, I just wanted to see, where does he rank compared to the other bigs in the league? I used cleaningtheglass.com for this. And compared to other bigs, he actually takes care of the ball well, and he moves it pretty well compared to other players at his position. His assist percentage is pretty high, and so is his turnover percentage. And then for his position, he doesn't shoot much close to the rim, but he does shoot a good amount of threes for his position. What are your thoughts, Joe, on Isaiah Roby so far through 16 games on offense?
Yeah, I like the pickup, of Isaiah Roby in the offseason by the San Antonio Spurs. Again, just having a healthy body out there. And the one thing that I did particularly like about Isaiah Roby is he's a very versatile player. Even watching him in the handful of games that I've been to at the AT&T Center, I pay close attention to him when he's in the game just to see how well he moves out there on the court. And I got to say, his movement is great. I see him move well without the ball as well in the open court. I like him in the open court. He can make good decisions, and he's also a decent passer, And the thing is since he's already played a little bit in this league, you can kind of say that he is a vet now. He's not just a brand new rookie. He has that experience, and that's one of the things that this young Spurs team is lacking. So anytime you have a young player who has experience, that's great for the younger players because he can impart that knowledge onto them. But just seeing the way that Isaiah Roby fits with the San Antonio Spurs squad, I like the move and the pickup by the Spurs. And the one thing is I'd like to note here is he doesn't play a lot of minutes. And the reason I think behind that is there's not a lot of minutes to go around. And the second is Coach Pop knows that it takes a little bit of time for any player to get acclimated to the San Antonio Spurs system. So as he gets more comfortable within the system, I think Pop will go ahead and let him play even more minutes. But he might get a lot of minutes if somebody goes down and is not healthy. Coach Pop might not have any other choice but to play the kid. But it's good to know that you at least have the caliber of one Isaiah Roby in your arsenal.
Yeah, we saw that, I think, in the Lakers game, how like Jeremy Sohan went down due to injury, and then, Roby got a lot of those minutes there at the 4 because, again, that's where Pop prefers to play him. As far as defensively, not too many numbers stick out here, but like you said, he's a very versatile player who Pop can kind of plug in different positions. So he's averaging about just 1 foul per game, 0 steals, 0 blocks, stats rounded. And then per 36 minutes, where does he stand out compared to his other teammates in the front court? He does stand out in deflections and not fouling much compared to his other teammates. But like you mentioned, Joe, I think that the main thing there for him is that he's like a flexible defender that Pop can kind of plug into different positions there. All right, so again, that wasn't too long of an episode. We just wanted to mainly talk about the the Spurs, unfortunately, being an 8-game losing streak. There's not much to talk about there. And then and then we'll see if they end that losing streak on in OKC on Wednesday. The big news there today was that they did sign Alizé Johnson, and then of course we want to talk about Isaiah Roby. So thanks to Joe for joining me on this episode of the Spurscast. I also want to say thank you to Joe for mixing and producing this episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.
See you.